Howdy, and welcome to the Haynie site. This is where Crow Canyon Archaeological Center has been conducting excavations for the past 4 years as part of the Northern Chaco Outliers project. My name's Kellum.
I'm Steve.
I'm Tim.
We're going to give you a little walkthrough of what we've been up to this season of work out here at the Haynie site. So for this season, things were really unusual, as they have been for a lot of people. We didn't have participants helping us out in the field, which really hampered our ability to get certain things done. But we took the opportunity to return to some of the very first units that were laid in at the Haynie site, actually. Right about here was some of the first test units that went into the site. And I'm guessing that the folks excavating on that unit could have had no idea that over the next 4 years it would develop into this. What you're looking at is a large Pueblo I room block. We've got portions of at least 5 rooms exposed, stretching from a few down there where we think we're in kind of the southwest corner of the building, through here where we've got a nearly fully exposed room that we expect to turn out to be a back room of a larger room block. And then over here on my right is another small room with a very different construction technique than the one I'm standing in. This room block may have continued further along. But some of our knowledge of where these walls are and what the structure is like has been truncated. And in fact, it's been truncated by a later pit structure that you can see just right over here, arcing around. Now that you've seen that, we're going to walk you through a couple aspects of the excavation from this season in greater detail.
Tim here. This summer I've been working in structure 1047, this pit house. Last year, this is the 4x8, if some of you remember it, and there was a circular stain here in the middle. This year we found the masonry walls and we mapped it, and it's actually sort of a sub-square pit structure. So we began digging it, and it has a really nice profile. We're probably going to show you a shot here in a minute. But one thing that was interesting was there was a lot of construction melt interfingered with the silts and charcoal flecked lenses that are on this profile. And we dug this test trench so that we could know what kind of strats we were coming to, so we weren't digging blindly, because it is sort of complicated. Like I said, there were those construction melt episodes that are interfingered with the silts and the charcoal flecked cultural fill. So those same construction lenses were not on this area, and it turns out there's a bin right here, or something. You can see a wall here, and then you can see it in profile here, and it's broken, and then on it in plan right there. And in this profile, which is opposite what you can see, there's more chunks of it. So some of it I think broke off, and probably some of it was part of this melt, and some of it broke off maybe when the roof collapsed. So that's an interesting feature. We also probed right here. Our probe went down 75 centimeters, so there's still quite a bit. This thing is deep. So it's sort of interesting that this is up so high. We're thinking it might be built on the bench. Before I actually started working in here, I worked in this 2x2 unit, and I found the ventilator shaft. It's interesting because it's sort of off-center, but then again there's this white surface, and I dug a test window over there, so there's cultural fill under it, so that was created. And there's some other staining that suggests maybe this has been remodeled a couple times. Maybe that wasn't the original shaft position. So this is all stuff we'll be working on next year. So this is the bisection of the pit structure, and you can see it, the stratigraphy is mostly silty laminations and charcoal flecked cultural fill. We've been finding Mancos and Cortez sherds in here, and you can see there's a lot of rock, so some of the walls may have been a few courses higher than they are right now. The only other interesting thing is the bottom of the bowl is offset to the south, but that makes sense because we right here to the northeast is all upslope, so everything would probably be washing in from the north and northeast.
Hey everybody, Steve here. So we're going to give you a little overview of the season that we were working this year. Obviously no participants like Kellum said, but we've still kept busy. In the area that we've been working in here, we started off in 2017 with, let's see, we had college field school students right over here in a 1x1. We had Susan Ryan with some college students in a 1x1 that went down here. And then we put a 2x2 in here to understand the area a little bit more. And that was right in here. We had high school field school in there. And then another 1x1 and a 1x1 here. So this area had 5 excavation units in it. But we're finally down the paperwork. We went through the paperwork, consolidated all the paperwork. And what we have is the first structure here was this wall that came all the way out right here and turned and went this way. And that was built into the fill, and we called that structure 186. The surface for that was right here. And then we had a little hearth, little fire pit. So we excavated that, we cleared the floor, and then we went down to get to the next structure down. And that structure is called 193, and that's this wall right in here. And that one's where things got complicated. As you can see from this profile, we had 4 surfaces in structure 193. And right now I'm in the very lowest surface in that structure. And actually we assigned another structure to this material because we had an earlier wall stub, which you could probably see from this, and here's the footer trench right in here. And it goes all the way around to over here in the corner. And you can see it right in here. All of this wall is an earlier, probably 800s component. The artifacts on the surface here had a moccasin vessel right here, an azurite ball, probably from southeast Utah, so we have some trade going on there, and a little grinding slab here with quite a few PLs, some little lithics around there, a nice cluster. Quite robust floor assemblage. We haven't had a floor assemblage like that out here at Haynie and since we started this project, so it's nice to see something in situ down there. Also have the post holes in this structure with the upright slabs. You can see those, one there, and another over there. Well, it looks like we have another PL, a little stink bug here. And so where I'm at now is at the very last surface. This material right here that you see, you can see some little gravels in here, and all of this, see how rocky it is, and some caliche. This was brought in to level this surface off, this structure, before they built the walls, because they had some sterile over here, but the sterile probably dropped and kind of went down at a slope here, so they didn't want a slopey floor. So bring this material in, level it off, and then cut your footer right here, footer trench down into it, pour some adobe in there, and start building the wall. So that's what I'll do next season is, of course, we subfloor this to see what it's constructed on, see if there's any earlier structures down in there. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm pretty much done for the year. I got a few features I want to investigate to see if they're real features or not. Might be rodent holes. Don't really know yet. And that'll wrap it up for this. So that's what I've been working on. This has been a long time coming on this, since 2017. And it's nice to get it done. And we've learned a lot from over here. A lot of deep occupation here, stacked right on top of one another prior to the construction of the great house. So that's what I've been doing.
Howdy, Kellum here. I've spent a lot of my time working in structure 1063, which is immediately adjacent to structure 193 and 186 that Steve's been telling you about. Now, what's really intriguing to me is that although this structure clearly is connected to these rooms, it uses a very different construction technique. Whereas this has got a lot of masonry, you can see all the stones in the wall there. This one is made almost entirely out of adobe. You can actually get a really good look at that right in here. The construction technique on this wall is these big boulder blocky core stones that are roughly coursed. We've got at least 2 layers of them here that are encased in a sort of purplish adobe that's made with a mixture of clay and caliche chunks, little white flecks of calcium carbonate and charcoal. We know that recipes for adobe can be very particular, and we might actually be able to learn a little bit about communities of practice at this site by comparing different kinds of adobe recipes as we encounter more buildings like this. Right over in here you can actually see how the room 193 was constructed first, and the adobe wall of structure 1063 that I'm standing in is really just kind of mashed right up against it here. And then there would have been a nice layer of grayish green plaster or kind of a clay layer over the adobe, hiding everything that you see right there. And it's actually very well preserved over here to my right. You can see this plaster as it copes around what is the northeast corner of the room. And you can see a post hole there in the corner. So this building would have been, the roof of the original version of this building was supported on posts, not actually on the wall. Now, there were 2 floors in this structure. Both of them had little ephemeral hearths or little burned patches, which is kind of intriguing because the room next to it, which had 4 floors, a couple of hearths in there, but several of them actually were just activity areas without any places for light or for fires. This one actually had those, although they weren't very formal. And the second floor up changed the configuration of the room. The post holes were gone, those were capped over, so the wall, the roof would have been supported on the walls. And in fact, we can identify that there was a doorway from the original version of the structure that had been sealed up. You can kind of see that there. It's that blob of slightly different colored material. So we haven't opened that up yet. Seemed like 2020's offered us enough surprises that we'll wait on opening the sealed ancient doorway until a future date. But this was a really interesting excavation simply because it allowed us to begin to understand how different households or room suites within this structure had different technologies for constructing their walls, for building their roofs, and that the histories of use in each of these structures right next to one another are actually rather different. As the excavations progressed, we realized that we might need to shift some of our strategy to better understand the deposits that we were encountering. We'd exposed small portions of this room, but it was really unclear what direction it was facing, and indeed even what part of a building we had come down inside of. So we decided to use a backhoe to remove lots of the disturbed and redeposited sediments that cover much of this end of the site. When the West Great House was deconstructed in the 1980s, all of the rubble from there was moved with a bulldozer and redeposited on top of existing structures over here. In places, it's over 1 meter deep. So we used a backhoe to scrape all of that back to the original intact deposits. And in the process, we trenched for wall segments and identified the extent of the southwest quarter of this structure and traced portions of it heading to the north as well. We were expecting to see more of this building arcing around, but very quickly we discovered another room block to the north of where we'd been working. As the backhoe operator was working, we really quickly identified the tops of these stone walls. And at that point, we realized we were back into intact deposits and began to scrape level across the whole thing. We wanted to expose the tops of this room block in plan view so that we could make decisions about how best to excavate it and sample it. As you can see, it looks like it has single width stone walls outlining possibly 3 or 4 individual rooms. We think, based on its location, that this structure probably corresponds to structure 1047, the sub-rectangular or the rectangle with rounded corners pit structure that's down in the larger excavation unit to the south. In upcoming seasons, we expect to sample portions of this structure and also to determine if there's other deposits underneath it. We suspect that portions of the Pueblo 1 room block that we've encountered probably arcs around this direction. And to test that hypothesis, we could take units down right here and see if we can expose the tops of additional walls from an earlier structure underneath. Part of our sampling strategy has involved placing 1 by 1 meter excavation units out in the area where we think there may have been midden deposits associated with the Great House and other structures. We had not anticipated just how much redeposited rubble from the West Great House we were going to encounter.
So I've been working in a couple 1 by 1s here, digging them down to bedrock, and you can see how far down bedrock is right here. One interesting thing we did find is that there's a we thought it was an intact midden deposit below the what Haynie pushed this direction, but we were still finding some historic artifacts, although they might be a little earlier than the Haynie. But we did find some nails, barbed wire, historic glazed ceramics, and glass.
So there's a quick overview of what we've been up to this year at the Haynie site. Once again, my name's Kellum.
Steve and Tim.
And hopefully we're going to see everybody shortly in the future.